Honestly, this is why you don't give children toys with batteries. They just make sounds when you don't want them to make sounds. Hey, everybody, and welcome to the Cinema Psych Podcast, the podcast where psychology meets film. I am your host, Dr. Alex Swan, and in this episode, we're going to go very quiet. It's going to be very quiet in here. Because we're talking A Quiet Place. Just a first movie. I mean, the second film is pretty much the same premise, and then A Quiet Place Day 1 shows the attack, and everyone like, oh my god, they hunt by sound. And by that time, we already know, the whole deal. So this is just the first one, A Quiet Place. It came out in 2018, and it was directed by John Krasinski. It was co-written by John Krasinski, as well as Scott Beck and Brian Woods, because a story they conceived together. John Krasinski kind of came in and helped produce it in the screenplay way. The film also stars John Krasinski as a father named Lee, a mother named Evelyn, played by real-life wife Emily Blunt, and children, 3 children, deaf daughter Reagan, son Marcus, and son Beau. And if you've seen this movie, unfortunately, Beau doesn't make it. He doesn't make it. And it's an early scene in the movie where Beau doesn't make it. And it's a bummer. But on the flip side, Evelyn's pregnant. Ooh, that's not great either. Oh boy. So we have this post-apocalyptic alien invasion story, and it's a fun one because the aliens are blind and they can only detect sounds. And they are a kind of hive organism. It's unclear, even in the prequel, A Quiet Place Day 1, it's unclear how advanced they are to be able to come to Earth to start hunting, but they are a predator animal, if we can call them an animal, I guess, if we can embark on that kind of defining. They are an organism that hunts prey, and they can only hunt via sound. So this episode is primarily a geeking out on sound and hearing, like stuff that I have come to learn doing this podcast over the last 7 years is really going to be front and center here because I love talking about this stuff. I love talking about it. So the movie follows how this family deals with this predator and the fact that they can't survive in a normal way because they can't make noise because these creatures are always around. And unfortunately for Lee, he don't make it. He doesn't. It's a bummer. I love how this movie, however, treats deafness. It centers deafness, and it treats it as a strength rather than a liability, because Reagan doesn't necessarily know how much sound she's creating, but it does allow her to engage with others that produces less sound. Like American Sign Language is a fantastic way to communicate silently. It's very cool. And you kind of, and when watching this movie, you can kind of grab some ASL phrases. Watching this movie back in 2018, 2019, I don't remember exactly when I saw it. It brought me back to high school, which was a good 15 years prior to this, when ASL was my primary foreign language that I learned. It's very good. You kind of just, you watch it and you're like, yeah, that would be a solid strategy for communication. Yeah, you could write things down, but that's not as fast. And it's not as visual either. Communicating with either hearing people or deaf people or hard of hearing people, ASL offers a quick way to communicate rather than having to write something out using symbols. And, what if you get a really loud screeching marker? The squeaky markers, you don't want that because the squeak is going to travel far. It's got a high pitch. It's going to travel a long distance, and it's going to signal the aliens that you're there. You don't want that. No, of course. Now, the one thing that I like about this movie is that it is a horror movie in a certain sense that focuses on simple folk trying to survive this post-apocalyptic environment. I would say that the military would likely figure out ways to kill these guys by creating weapons that are supersonic, right? Like, I don't think an organism, they're pretty dangerous and they're fast and they're, they're hard to kill because they've got hard shells, right? And they open up their bodies to show fleshiness when they're trying to hear really well. But honestly, I'm sure the military would come up with some supersonic weapons. They developed them for Hulk, right? To kick his ass. So I wouldn't be surprised if they would develop something and to where like they could just get a big giant axe or a guillotine or something that would render this invasion null and void. We don't see it in any of these movies, and that's okay. But I'm sure it would come. Not saying a lot of people wouldn't die. Of course they would die. But, I think we'd have this one in the bag, considering how the end of the movie plays out. So let's go ahead and quiet ourselves. Or go hang out by a waterfall and jump into A Quiet Place. My guest host today is Dr. T.R. Brooks. T.R. is an associate professor in the psychology department at the College of Idaho, a small liberal arts college near Boise. Actually, I did have a question, and you can answer this when I'm done. Is it Boise or Boise? Interesting question. This came up. Anyways, sorry about that, folks. The last time TR joined the show was last year in episode 96, where we discussed another perception-based title called Perfect Sense. TR, welcome back to the show. Boise or Boise?
It's something of a shibboleth, right? It's a word that if you pronounce it one way, it indicates that you're an outsider.
Yeah,
and so
you're right.
If you want to fit in Boise, you use the S sound. So Boise. And if you want to let people know you're not from there, you say Boise.
Okay. Interesting. So I can subvert expectations by saying Boise when I visit there. Yeah. Excellent. Well, I'm glad you're back, and we have another sensation and perception filled episode here with A Quiet Place. Before we jump into discussing the movie, we've got the fall semester coming up at the College of Idaho. What are you preparing to teach next semester?
Yeah, I'm teaching one of my usuals, which is biological psychology.
Oh, me too. Excellent.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, that one's my bread and butter. It's what got me hired there.
Okay.
And I've taught it almost every semester since I started teaching 8 years ago.
Interesting. Okay. Very cool.
Yeah, I've probably taught 16 sections of it at this point.
Oh my goodness. That's like me and 101.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've taught that a bunch of times as well. I'm teaching environmental psychology, which some would say is a different kind of area. And I think that's partially because environmental psychology isn't very well defined.
Yeah.
But I see it as an extension of perception.
Okay.
And that's the kind of the angle we take in it. And then I'm teaching research design and analysis.
Excellent.
And then I just found out,
oh no,
one of our new faculty might not be able to start on day one.
Oh,
and
no.
So I might get to teach an 8 a.m. section for a couple weeks.
Oh, you're going to get the gift of an 8 a.m. course.
Yeah.
For the entire semester or just intro period here?
That's unclear. I found out yesterday.
Okay.
And
oh boy.
I said, it sounded to me like temporary. And he's like, okay, yeah, I can do that. And then my department chair said, right. And, if it starts to drag on to the end of the semester, I was like, whoa, I will agree to 2 weeks today. And, we can revisit that later. But right now I'll agree to 2 weeks.
Okay. Well, I'm wishing you the best of luck with that hard line there.
Yeah. Thanks.
I mean, but I get the willingness to tag in and be like that, because, at the end of the day, it's like trying to make sure that your students are taken care of for something that's not their fault, right?
Yeah, for sure.
So I get it. So good luck to you. What course is going to enter the Sleepy Minds at 8 a.m.? What topic?
Yeah, it's a critical thinking course.
Okay, great time at 8 a.m.
Yeah, I actually taught it last fall at 8 a.m. And it's a class that everyone in the department teaches a little differently,
Mhm.
and we don't have we don't have a standard way we teach it, and it's not always clear what the class is about to everyone involved. So I've been trying to find my footing in it for a while, and I think we cover some great topics. I think it's a valuable course.
Yeah.
I just always feel like a little bit like by the seat of my pants, no matter how much I prep for it. So
Oh yeah,
we'll see how
absolutely.
the first 2 weeks at least turn out this time.
Okay, well, like I said, good luck, and hopefully it works out that you can tap out in a couple of weeks. All right, let's jump into upstate New York, where some aliens are hunting by the seat of their sound, the seat of their ears, right? Before we jump into the sensation and perception of it all, I wanted to get your sense of what you thought of the movie. And it's, I think, pretty decent original idea about an alien invasion.
Yeah, an alien invasion is always, in my mind, pretty far-fetched, just given what we know about space travel and interstellar distances, and the unfeasibility of finding a planet that's anywhere close to like what your home planet is like in terms of being survivable and desirable.
Mm-hmm.
But given that you're going to see an alien film, I think we kind of from the beginning are willing to put all that aside. It's not clear what these aliens want, and
we don't even know how intelligent they are.
Right? Yeah, they on the one hand appear to be pretty perceptive, but also they're able to kind of deduce some things. It seems, but at the same time, they don't appear to have any technology they themselves use.
Right?
They don't really. We don't ever really see them communicate with each other.
Mm-mm.
And overall, I really, really liked the film. As you said, it's very original. And it's only a couple films a year where I leave feeling like I've really been surprised and challenged and just feel really satisfied with the film as a whole. And this was one of the top films of that year for me. And it's still a favorite. The last one we did, Perfect Sense. I'll first say it's nice to be talking about one today that people have seen. And that one critics didn't love. I always say a film only needs to do a couple of things well for me to like it, and Perfect Sense did a couple of things really well.
Mm-hmm.
This one did so many things well. A Quiet Place did so many things well, and so I really, really like it, despite some of these things you have to ignore. And I think they do a good job of misdirection from that stuff.
Right. I mean, the initial surprise, and there's spoilers abound here, the initial surprise in the movie is a subversion of expectations, right? You see okay, here's a toy for the youngest kid, take out the batteries. He's like, no, I want batteries, because he doesn't understand that he can't have a toy that makes noise. And it ends up moving the plot forward because he gets taken by the alien because he decides to make noise with this. You're like, oh my God. Okay, well, where's this going to go now? They started with a child death right at the outset, first 10 minutes.
Yeah, and that's kind of a horror movie trope too, right? Mm-hmm. Starting with a death, and people have argued that horror movies are actually about grief, and so many of them are about grief,
right?
Which is just kind of wild and unexpected. But if you start thinking of all the horror movies the last few years, it's hard to get away from it. I'm thinking of both of the Ari Aster films I've seen, Hereditary and Midsummer, and they both start with a death or a loss and
Yeah.
grief. The Babadook is about grief and loss, and it is I'll say kind of annoying to have a kid die at the beginning of a movie because I'm like, oh man, we're going to start off with this.
Yeah.
Especially I had very young kids when I saw it for the first time.
Yeah.
But of course, it makes it very salient.
Well, in an effort to be completely glib and flippant here, the child is replaced by another one.
That's true.
And this is definitely like the writers, including John Krasinski, coming up with what are things that make so much noise that we don't necessarily pay attention to in any given circumstance in normal daily life, but like would be really bad in this situation and absolutely having a child.
Yeah,
right.
I almost want to say it's an outrageous choice on the part of the writers, and that's what makes it work. And one class I get to teach in our short winter term is psychology and science fiction.
Ooh, I like
and
that.
It's so fun. Except, like any class, in the end, you have to grade people.
Yeah,
and that means you have to make them do work. And so the best I can come up with is you have to your project is you have to write a short story, a sci-fi short story. And that has sort of over the years has sort of taken over more and more of the class, which I'm okay with and I really like. And it's becomes much more, just as much a class about storytelling as it is about psychology or science fiction specifically. And one thing I've discovered for myself, and now I teach to the students, is there's no story without irony. You need some kind of irony.
Sure.
And maybe we can generally say that the bigger irony, the better the story. And this is a film with lots of irony. We have a world where you have to be absolutely quiet and a newborn baby.
Yep.
That's irony. And we have a world where you have to pay attention to all the sounds you're making. And we have a character who's deaf.
But I like how the movie plays that as a strength, right? It is
Absolutely.
Lovely dramatic irony, of course. And quite on the nose for a movie like this, but they don't ever make it her undoing, we'll say, right? She's probably the strongest character in the movie, and well played, as you note in our notes here, by Millicent Simmons, who is a deaf actress.
Yeah. The acting in general is great. I happened to watch The Devil Wears Prada Part 2 the week after this, not planning to do a Emily Blunt binge. It's just that she was in like every movie for a few years there.
Yeah. You got Oppenheimer next to do.
Oh, right. Yeah. And it had two names, The Edge of Tomorrow, also called Live, Die, Repeat.
Yeah, exactly.
Also a fun sci-fi film. But she's so different in The Devil Wears Prada. It's just, she's, I don't know, really versatile.
And to be fair, she carries the second film because the bookend death in this first A Quiet Place is John Krasinski's character, dad. So we've got the son death in the beginning, a couple of deaths in the middle, right, of non-main characters, and then we get Lee in the end. And so he's not in the second one. And so her Evelyn character has to carry the sequel all by herself with this real life husband not actually being part of the story. So yeah, I definitely agree that she had to be a strong character, and of course she's a very good actress, to not only be good in this movie but then also carry the second one.
Yeah, absolutely. And such different characters, pregnant mother in a post-apocalyptic hellscape versus this
rough.
Devil Wears Prada 2 character who is in a totally different kind of hellscape.
Well, at least according to you.
Yeah.
What did you think of John Krasinski's Auteur 3? He's a writer, director, actor. What did you think of his roles in this movie?
Yeah, I mean, so impressive. Watching The Office, I enjoyed The Office.
Yeah.
But I got a sense from it that John Krasinski in The Office is just playing himself.
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, if you remember during the pandemic, they had some good news show that he put on YouTube, and it was very Jim coded. So I definitely see where you're going with that.
Yeah, and it's one could be forgiven for believing that that's all he can do, and he's very different in this movie. He's got a beard, constantly on edge. He's hyper vigilant, but also loving, and he's having to balance being loving with being protective. And I forgot pretty quickly that he was Jim watching it. And
Very steely and resolved, but you can clearly see that he's got the weight of this world on him and the consequences of unprotected sex and having a deaf child and what that means for her life and all of this stuff. He definitely shows that on his face. Wonderful acting by him as well, breaking out of that typecasting you're referring to with Jim from The Office and some other comedy films that he had done previously, right? So
yeah, and so not only is he a better actor than we realized, but writer and director. I wish I'd looked this up, but I wonder if he got some experience with both of those on The Office, because I know when those shows tend to go on, they tend to allow some of the star actors to direct an episode. And certainly there was some, I'm sure, plenty of improvisation and probably some writing credit to him on that show, I would imagine.
Yeah, maybe toward the end. Absolutely. Yeah, because at that point, he knew who Jim was. He was able to just characterize him in a way that maybe some of the writing team could not at that point. Yeah, absolutely.
Oh my God! Hey, baby. Oh, okay. It's okay.
Okay, I think we've got a jam-packed discussion headed our way about the psych concepts in this movie. So let's go ahead and pivot to the main topic of our psych discussion today with respect to this film, and that is hearing. We talked a little bit about hearing when we discussed Perfect Sense, but I think, of course, this movie is all about hearing and the various ways in which it works and doesn't work. So let's just jump in directly with hearing. So when you introduce this topic to your students, TR, how do you characterize the sense of audition?
Yeah, great question. There's two ways you can characterize it. I think in your standard sensation and perception class, or any class where you're covering perception, you start with vision because that's where most of the research is.
Yeah.
And that's for sighted individuals, that's most of our experience. Most of what we attend to is visual information.
Yeah, and I would say it's the human species' primary sense.
Yeah, and so then you want to tie it to what we've learned already. And so we talk about ways in which sound is like vision.
Mm-hmm.
And I point out it's like it in, I guess, three ways. One is it uses kinetic energy, which, not all senses do. Some use chemical energy.
Right.
And then it's a distal sense, which means you don't have to be in contact with the energy source to perceive it. And then the third way is that we can represent the energy as a wave. And in fact, it's different from vision in that it is a true wave.
Right.
Light is weird. It's a
wavicle.
What's that?
It's a wavicle.
A wavicle, exactly. It has frequency, but not amplitude. And I don't know what that means because I'm not a physicist, but I'm told that light does not actually have amplitude unless you want to represent number of photons as an amplitude, but that's just a way of visualizing it. It's not really amplitude.
Right, we don't actually know.
But the other way to classify sound is anatomically.
Okay.
And with looking at hair cells, the sensory transducers. And in that sense, hearing is more like touch because evolutionary biologists tell us that hair cells are modified touch receptors.
Yeah.
They've developed to touch this and feel the vibrations in the air rather than vibrations through a solid medium.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of wild that hearing is modified touch.
Modified
so that's
touch.
a way to think about it.
And it's wild too, because when the sound waves that are traveling through one medium, air, as you say, finally reach the organs in the ear, the hair cells are actually feeling it through and I'm using feeling here as a touch feeling, through a liquid. So it transfers media. It goes from air to liquid, and then it is perceived through the mechanisms in the brain, which I find to be extremely fascinating, because we don't necessarily need to do that with the sensory receptors in our skin. But at the same time, those aren't distal stimuli or distal receptors.
Yeah, and it's sometimes these distinctions become kind of arbitrary as well, know, because the cochlea is filled with fluid, but we also know that the basilar membrane is a solid, or the distinction between solid and liquid as well, right? Yeah. But the basilar membrane is a solid where the hair cells sit, and that has a natural resonant frequency that varies along its length and
based on its hardness. Yeah,
and its hardness is what helps us identify pitch, and it's incredibly complex, and that's before we even get to the neurons themselves.
Yeah, exactly. Before we even get to the neurons and what it is that is being heard. So humans are pretty good at hearing, I'll say, when compared to other animals, but are definitely on the lower end of the spectrum. Fish can hear, and even marine mammals can hear a lot better, because sound waves travel much better in water than they do in air, much farther and much better. But for not including sea animal life, for land animals, we're not as good as others. We have a typical range that we can hear. And I think this is a useful thing to talk about with hearing in relation to this movie, right? So we have humans who are the primary vehicle for the experience of this alien invasion. And then we have the aliens themselves, right? So humans can hear in this relatively narrow band of sound. And that is typified by the sounds that humans themselves make, right? But these aliens, so far as portrayed in this movie, have a much wider range. Why do you think the filmmakers made that choice?
Well, I don't know. If what worked for me, and if I were to try to guess, I would think it makes them more alien. Well, I think there's several reasons. One is we mentioned irony. They identified this way to make this really ironic story about sound and having to be quiet, but also that it makes the aliens more alien. It makes them harder for us to know what they want, and that makes them more frightening and almost like a force of nature. Yeah, I think their experience is so impenetrable to us, and so we can't reason with them. We can't know what they want, and it just makes them such a formidable enemy, I think. And you mentioned range of hearing, and it's easy for us to forget that. Dolphins, who we think of as having a sort of kinship with humans, as far as animals that we can empathize with, and animals we can kind of wonder what it's like to be them. Dolphins are, I think, maybe in the top 10 species.
Yeah.
But they have a hearing range that has, I think, 17 times broader than ours.
Yeah.
So
wow. It's a lot.
It is, especially when you consider that how high those frequencies go.
Right. Yeah.
Kind of nuts.
And the fact that they don't have the same kind of necessity, evolutionarily speaking, of ears. You don't see human or primate kinds of ears, or even like other land mammal kinds of ears on marine mammals. They're flat holes.
It must not be worth the extra drag in the water.
Right. It must not be worth the extra drag, and it's probably not needed, right? Because the sound from the water is touching them directly, which is interesting. So I want to talk about the alien's ability to hear, and I want to compare this to what we know about humans. So these ranges represent thresholds. So in the movie, the characters have to understand the nature of thresholds, right? They have to understand that walking on crunchy leaves is going to be louder than sand, for example, right? Using ASL, American Sign Language, is better for communication, at least line of sight communication, to whispering, right? So in the aspect of talking about thresholds, these aliens have to have the ability to detect those thresholds, and those thresholds need to be either different from the outside or the ambient to represent possible prey, right? So what is this called, and do the filmmakers portray it in a reasonable way?
Yeah, so it sounds like you're talking about the just noticeable difference,
Correct.
or the
Yeah.
J&D, and which is related to the Weber-Fechner law of detecting differences, where essentially it's logarithmic, where the louder an ambient sound is, the louder still a competing sound has to be detected or to be distinguished.
Yeah.
Those are, it's worth mentioning, those findings are done under really carefully controlled lab settings.
Yeah, that's
and
true.
In the real world, you have the sounds happening at the same time.
Yeah.
And also, I will now out myself as a Gibsonian, as someone who, in most contexts, I approach things from a direct perception standpoint.
Yeah.
And I think
for those not familiar with J.J. Gibson's work, the idea is that we perceive enough to get the gist.
Yeah, the information is rich enough, essentially, that we can consider, we can take the standpoint of what you see is what you get, what you hear is what you get, and that 99.9% of the time, perception is veridical and correct. And that, not only that, but you can subvert some of these, we call them laws, and I don't object to that, but we can subvert them sometimes through practice, through training. We can learn to maybe not pick up in the same way, or in the same way that the lab task is structured, but through repeated exposure, we can distinguish it. And I'll just give an example from vision, where we know that at a certain refresh rate on a monitor, it looks like movement to us, and we don't question like, oh, this looks choppy.
Yeah.
But if I were, let's say, someone who designs screens, and I make one that updates twice as quickly, that refreshes twice as quickly, has twice the refresh rate, I could learn to see the difference, even though it's well past the flicker fusion rate. And after that, the old ones might look jumpy to me. And, I wonder if these aliens, given plenty of time, could start to tell, well, that sounds like a human stepping in sand, not just, the normal ambient white noise.
Yeah.
And just maybe that gives you an idea of the ridiculous depths to which I think about a movie like this sometimes.
No, I like it. It's good because with, it's been a year since the first invasion. So the title cards say day, blah, 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 right?
Yeah, we start with day 89.
Yeah.
What I love is we don't
really know. I think the assumption is that audiences are like, well, the first time that one of these aliens was perceived. And of course, we get the answer in A Quiet Place Day 1, the prequel, right? Where they attack, where they land on an asteroid or a meteor shower, which turn into meteorites, of course. And that's Day 1. So that kind of like puts those title cards into context and perspective. So
and then the next one is day 400 something. I think I calculated it's about a year and a month later. So
from day
enough
89
to get pregnant while you're grieving, which would be wild,
Yeah, so that is right. Okay, so that puts into context the pregnancy occurs after the death of their third child, and so they replace it, but then they're not dealing with the consequences properly, I would imagine, of having an unplanned pregnancy. Yeah, I mean, listen, you got to do what you got to do in times of great strife, right? Living life.
Yeah, or maybe with everyone dying, they're thinking, we got to make more people.
We got to procreate in some way. Maybe not the best with an animal alien that hunts by sound, but to each their own, right? Different strokes. We can have our armchair reactions to this because we're not in that world. We're not in that world.
Yeah, and I was going to mention one other thing with the alien capabilities, and since we get to nitpick,
Yeah, sure, go ahead.
with the caveat that like none of this makes the film not work for me, but it
Okay.
is fun to point out the aliens. They tend to be, barring at what you were hinting at, some very foreign and hard to understand difference these aliens have with thresholds where they don't seem to follow normal rules.
Mm-hmm.
The thresholds seem really inconsistent in some
Yeah.
parts.
They were narratively convenient.
Right. Yeah, exactly. You can drop a plate underground a mile away and that will bring them to you. But if they're like inches from you, as long as you hold really still, they can't hear you. They can't hear you breathe, apparently. I don't know. I should time some of those scenes. Could you hold your breath this long? Probably. But if their hearing's that good, I would think they could hear heartbeats. Maybe they just haven't learned to know what those are yet. And it reminds me of this little anecdote. I think I have to share it because it's so topical.
Okay.
This is from John Cage. And according to John Cage, everyone who knows him knows this story or knew him while he was alive. And I'll just read it for you. It was after I got to Boston that I went to the anechoic chamber at Harvard University. Anybody who knows me knows this story. I am constantly telling it. Anyway, in that silent room, I heard two sounds, one high and one low. Afterward, I asked the engineer in charge why, if the room was so silent, I had heard the two sounds. Describe them, he said. I did. He said the high one was your nervous system in operation, the low one was your blood in circulation. It's a great story. It's probably not the case that anyone could ever hear their own nervous system. But, I think we've had times where at least our heart was pounding and it was really quiet and we felt like we could hear our own heartbeat.
Yeah.
I would think these aliens could hear a human heartbeat in a quiet environment.
You would think maybe, again, something that you said earlier, maybe they were struggling to separate if they were intelligent, right? This what I'm about to say presupposes that they have some intelligence to distinguish different species on the planet. So they were having trouble distinguishing heartbeats from things that aren't from animals that aren't humans, right? So I don't want to eat this deer because that's not who I'm worried about. Right. On this planet. That's not the species that I need to eradicate to colonize this new world.
Yeah. Right. They didn't go after those raccoons when those came. Right.
And raccoons are notoriously loud. We were on vacation this summer and we asked our neighbor to bring in our empty trash can after trash pickup day, and she put it on a piece of grass that was not stable for it, and there was no trash in it, but we do get nightly visitors, nightly raccoon visitors, and he was very angry and knocked over the trash can that there was nothing in it. These jerks did not leave us anything. So notoriously loud. I did want to also point out that while this story from John Cage is really cool, I watched a video last year maybe on somebody going into an anechoic chamber. I don't know if it was the one at Harvard or it's just another one that was made to do it.
And there's one in Minnesota that I think is the most effective one in the world.
And it makes people crazy. It's so quiet in there.
It's apparently like having your mind just sucked out of your ears. And I don't know if you've ever done this yourself, but you can do a thing called the Ganzfeld protocol, where you
have not heard
essentially set up a sensory deprivation situation.
Okay.
This is where you put the ping pong balls over your eyes.
Okay.
And then you shine you bathe the room in red light.
Okay.
And that's just for visual. You have other things you can do with your hearing and so on. But it doesn't look like you're seeing the color red. It does for, 30 seconds, but pretty quickly it's like not seeing. And I don't know what it's like to lose vision, but it's nothing like closing your eyes. And it's nothing like looking at something red. It's like you don't have vision pretty quickly. And it's because there's no contrast.
Wow.
We're so used to closing our eyes that there's something that is like, there's something that it feels like, and it feels like darkness.
Right.
But having your eyes open and not seeing darkness and not seeing red, because the red seems to go away, is pretty unnerving. I imagine that going in the anechoic chamber is even worse in a way because it's even more foreign, I would think. Our world is just always awash in sound. Right now, I can hear the HVAC system. I can hear the fan in my laptop. I can hear chattering from my family in the hallway. You can't get away from sound normally.
Yeah. We'll hit up on that topic in a little bit because it's a really useful one with respect to this movie. Before we move on, I wanted to just throw out there with the just noticeable difference and the laws associated with detecting differences in thresholds from signals and noise is that this is the aspect of signal detection theory that I did in graduate school, and with respect to reasoning as opposed to sound, but it works for all these different kinds of things. And the aspect that really shines a great light, in my opinion, on signal detection theory is the use of waterfalls. Waterfalls are really loud, and they mask any kinds of signals that the aliens might be using to detect humans. Again, assuming that they have some intelligence and they are specifically hunting humans because of their dominance on Earth, right? So the idea is that the waterfalls create so much noise that it prevents these aliens from detecting the signal in that noise. This idea applies to all sorts of different things: static, detecting an effect in a research design, all these different modes and analogs to this idea. And I thought to myself, after watching the first movie, before watching the second one or anything like that, why didn't they just live by the waterfall?
Why didn't you let her come? Do you blame her for what happened?
No.
Because she blames herself.
It was no one's fault.
You still love her, right?
Of course I do.
You should tell her.
Right. I guess the bonehead answer is it's not where their house was.
Yeah.
But it seems
Right.
like it's so dangerous to live in your house that you would just set up camp. You
Yeah,
have to move a lot of things. And they appeared to still be like growing corn somehow. They had planted corn in the last year. They had somehow silently planted corn. Actually, corn cannot reseed itself, from what I understand. You have to open up the ears of corn and
Yeah.
can't get out otherwise.
Right.
So yeah, I guess it's where their farm was. But why not at least spend more time there? At least spend weekends there and relax a little bit. And
Yeah, maybe take the
other.
edge off,
Yeah.
and then maybe slow. So see, here's what I would do in this world, and speaking from an obvious omniscience to this universe, is I would move everything from the house and make camp by this waterfall, and then only travel to the farm when I need to be at the farm. You know? Eventually, that ground is not going to be suitable for corn anyways if they don't rotate their crops. They got to put soy on top every 3 years. You can do corn, but then you have to do soy. And this is, I've learned this, and I could be wrong, but I've learned this from living in Illinois now, right? The second...
And you'd want to do that anyway, because who can eat that much corn? Like,
right. You don't get all of its nutrients. So, I would move my life to that waterfall and only be so vigilant when I'm at the fields. And maybe the density of the alien invaders weeds out so much that you can go to the field and be relatively fine with the sound of cultivation, any kind of farming sounds that you need to do, right?
Yeah.
Or pick a windy day to do the cultivating.
Yeah,
because
or
all of the
raccoons with you, or
oh, yeah, right. Or yeah, find an animal that makes a lot of noise that you can catch and have it be your decoy. I don't know, have it be your ruse, right? Okay. So moving on in this conversation to, I'm glad we found the same issue with their lack of smarts in this movie. Let's go live at a factory, a large metal factory. That's I think that's in the second one. So the other thing that is portrayed in this movie is how both humans, but more importantly, how these aliens localize sound, right? So what's your elevator pitch to your students for sound localization?
Yeah, so it's something other animals do really well, incredibly well, to the point of using, sonar, sending out their own sounds to localize. But it's a thing that humans do better than you think, and that some humans can do. And when I say some, I mean there's really been only two, as far as I know, are able to do it effectively enough that sound localization, the way they do it, is echolocation and is enough to be comparable to the way bats or dolphins do it. Two-eared anatomy is helpful, maybe even critical. With those offset locations, you get interoral differences, interoral time differences. So sound arrives at one ear first and the other ear second.
Oh, yeah.
Tells you a direction. You get interoral phase differences. So when the peak arrives at one ear, the trough is at another ear, and that gives you some geometry on the sound location.
Sure, yeah.
And then you, of course, have interoral intensity differences. It's louder in one ear than the other. But bizarrely, this only disambiguates it, just from a purely mathematical standpoint. This only disambiguates it to within a cone-shaped area.
Yeah, right.
Called the cone of confusion, because if something's directly in front of you or directly behind you, you'll get the same interoral differences because the geometry is the same.
Yeah.
And so there's something else we're getting, whether it's reflected sound that our two-eared anatomy exploits, or whether there's one weird experiment that shows it's the shape of the human ear that causes a unique pathway into the auditory canal based on location. And so we call those monaural cues, and they discovered this by placing putty in people's ears.
Right.
And their one-eared sound localization became very bad.
Right.
But they slowly relearned over a period of almost 3 weeks.
Yeah, almost 3 weeks. I find this study to be extremely fascinating, and how adept humans are at reshaping, as far as like plasticity is concerned, reshaping their sound perception, right? Because the sensation is not changing. Let's be clear with the listener here. Putty in your ear is going to be the same as molded to your ear, and the pinna, which is the funny shape that it is on the sides of our heads. The sensation of the sound doesn't change, especially in this experimental setting when they literally just played tones at different elevations. It's the fact that perception was able to catch up and reorganize stuff during that period that is the most fascinating to me.
Yeah, and I found in practice the cone of confusion is actually really tricky to demonstrate. I've set up various lab activities, and sometimes we manage it. We go outside. I try to move away from buildings where the sound is going to bounce off of the buildings. And I have one student stand with their eyes covered, and another pair of students arrange themselves somewhere where one student is in the cone of confusion of the other student. And I have one student clap once, and then the test subject student tries to point at the location of the sound. And like maybe 1 out of every 10 trials, they'll point at the wrong student. And what's fascinating to me is they won't ever point like just off of one student.
Yeah.
If they point at the right student, they're right on. But if they're wrong in exactly the opposite direction in the cone of confusion. And so we are able to demonstrate it sometimes. But for the most part, people are pretty good at disambiguating it.
Yeah.
So the cone of confusion is more of a theoretical construct than a thing that happens in real life.
Yeah, and even in like textbooks, it's visualized by a shadow, like it's a literal sound shadow,
Yeah.
Right, to play on our again our visual senses as being the ones that we have the strongest metaphors for, I suppose. But yeah, that's very interesting. I might steal that from you. I might hit you up later next time I teach S&P and do that one, because I'm trying to incorporate more things for my students to do. So I like that one.
I have a lot of silly activities, so yeah, ask anytime.
Awesome. Okay, so I made a comment in our notes, and I wanted to address this because I think it would be quite interesting. So in the movie, my understanding from watching it is that the aliens can like move parts of their bodies to adjust to sound, so they can localize.
Yeah, they have these wild movable plates
Yeah.
that are simultaneously bulletproof,
I know, right?
but also useful as sound reflectors or absorbers.
And they're quadrupeds, right? I believe they've got 4 limbs.
Yeah, for something so inhuman, they're surprisingly human.
Surprisingly,
they have an obvious head,
Earth-like,
4 obvious limbs.
Yeah, and a mouth, right? But no eyes. They don't have any eyes. They can't see.
No eyes. Yeah.
And so I made this comment that, you know, the way to tell someone that you are all ears is to suggest to them that you have your undivided attention, right? And so I said more ears means better localization. And when I wrote that comment, I don't know if I was necessarily talking about it in a scientific sense, although it probably came off that way. But I was actually thinking about a character that is in my head that I'm having some cryptonesia because I don't know the source. It may be a mutant from Marvel Comics or some sort of other kind of mutant from other stories, but he literally has all ears all over his body.
Wow.
And so I'm like, he's got to be good at knowing where sounds come from.
Sounds like a biblically accurate angel, but different.
Right. Okay. and yeah, and something akin to that as well. And so maybe that's how angels can hear so well, right? All of the prayers that come their way. And so it makes sense to me, but you took slight, I wouldn't say umbrage, but you've taken some disagreement.
I had some skepticism. Well, yeah, this goes back to, it probably actually comes from an observation by Gibson where he pointed out that we're so obsessed with binocular vision and it providing depth perception. And he says, you know, it has its advantages, but there is so much more to depth perception that binocular vision is a much smaller part of it than people appreciate. And from my own experience, my friend Parker has a glass eye.
Okay.
And yet he can play basketball. You know, he can navigate a cluttered room really well.
Okay.
And, you know, would 3 eyes give you better depth perception? Would 6 eyes? I think at a certain point, we see in biology that biology gets us to good enough, and maybe more ears would be better. Maybe a 3rd ear would be better, but how much better? And how much better is a 4th ear on top of a 3rd ear? And so that's not at all to take away from the idea that if this animal's entire body is a hearing sensory organ, that's got to buy you something for sure.
Yeah.
And I'm not sneering at that, but I think when non-scientists write sci-fi, you get these delightful exaggerations. And I say that I'm not at all being condescending. Like, I think that's great. I wouldn't have thought of making the whole animal's body an ear because I would have probably dismissed it saying, that wouldn't really be that much better.
Right. As a scientist writing a story, this is crap. Crumple, 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 throw it away.
Yeah, you'd think having science training would make you a better sci-fi writer. I find it's just as often an obstacle.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. Okay. So we have a sense of these aliens' abilities, right? But I want to pivot to the humans here for a second and talk a little bit about how hearing melds with other kinds of processing. So we'll first start with what you mentioned a little while ago, which is that you can hear the HVAC, right? When we were talking about sound deprivation or just sensory deprivation, right? When you want to, you can attend to your soundful environment, right? It is a rich auditory space. Okay. And so attention plays a role here, as well as habituation and sensitization. So unless you actually wanted to pay attention to the fan sound in your computer, you don't have to. It's just background noise. And our brains understand that if it's not important, we don't actually need to give any resources to it. Now, on the flip side, if it was really loud and you were like, holy crap, I'm doing something that is really taxing this processor and this memory, like maybe I should tone it down a little bit so the fan noise stops, or maybe it's making a slightly concerning sound like it's gonna break or something like that, then you really don't care about it, right? So it's easy for humans to do this. And in this kind of story, it's easy for the humans that we're following to fall into this habituation trap because they don't know the sounds that they are making, which is this suspense and the tension associated with Reagan's character, right? Because she is deaf.
Yeah.
She can't habituate to things that she has not perceived herself, or at least can't feel, because a lot of deaf people can hear by making it loud enough.
Yeah.
And
although,
feeling through their bodies.
At the same time, the characters know what kinds of activities or events are going to call the aliens to them, and they know this without insight into what it's like for the aliens. And so Regan probably, I imagine, still has a pretty good sense of which things, like she can still feel when she bumps something in the room.
Right.
She still knows when she's dropped something.
Right.
If it's something that happens in the room behind her, she wouldn't know it had happened, but she might still have a sense, of what's going to call the aliens, but not, I don't know. You wonder, what is a deaf person's understanding of sound like? It's probably not that far off from how sound actually works, but.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I've had a lot of conversations. I mentioned this in the intro, but I took ASL in high school as my foreign language, and had a lot of conversations with the teachers who were deaf about their experiences with sound. And at the same time, my uncle made it his career to be an interpreter and work at deaf schools. So he's had tons of conversations, and he's said very similar things when I was in high school and had conversations with him about it. I'm far removed from ASL now. Like, I can do the alphabet and a few signs here and there, but it's really truly one of those languages that if you do not practice, you will lose the language, as opposed to a spoken language. And so I think the film does a really, really good job of showing how Reagan is capable of living in this world, even though she cannot. For example, the opposite side of habituation is sensitization, where you are so tuned to a given stimulus that you can't not engage with it. So in this case, hearing, and it's the clicks that the aliens make.
Yeah.
And the clicks have to be some form of echolocation, right?
Yeah. I mean, that's literally what Daniel Kish, who's one of these people who can use, one of two people that I know about, and the only one still living, who can use this type of human echolocation.
Yeah. I recently saw something about him on this, and I was like, holy crap, that's really cool.
Yeah. And so for anyone who doesn't know, he lost his eyes to cancer when he was very young. And so he began developing visually. I think he was like 4 years old or something.
Yeah, it was when he was a small child.
See. Yeah. So maybe that's a necessary thing, because the other person, Ben Underwood, who was a teenager, he died when he was a teenager. He also lost his eyes to cancer when he was about that same age. And both of them, independently from each other, developed spontaneously this technique for clicking their tongue to very effectively echolocate. Both of them learned to ride a bicycle through their neighborhood. Daniel Kish goes hiking by himself.
Right.
Daniel Kish says he can identify any object about the size of a grapefruit or larger within 20 feet. And then larger objects farther away, smaller objects closer up. He can squeeze through a narrow doorway or passageway without, he turns his body before he even gets to it, because he knows.
So striking. So striking, this ability.
And he's tried to teach other people, and he's even set up a foundation to teach other people. And I don't think it has worked very well.
No, and I did read about that because it takes a significant amount of practice for one thing, and then everyone's experience is going to be different. So there's no way to map it to scale.
Yeah, and there might be a critical period for visual development where both of them had vision early in life. And so maybe there was some sort of critical period for developing that type of spatial processing, and that's required to learn this echolocation.
And so I do a little echolocation demo in Sensation and Perception, and I have my students try to find a pitch on the low end to hum, and then walk toward a wall with their eyes closed and stop before they reach the wall. And I've been doing this for years, but then I came across the Kish stuff, and I was like, it makes sense that the clicking is far better than humming, because you only have to click once you need to, right? It's like an on-demand kind of thing, whereas humming requires constant supply to know where things are, and you have to keep the same pitch generated that you are, and it's not going to go as far.
You also, when the sound returns to you, it's competing with you hearing yourself hum.
That too, right? And
you're sending out just a little, you're getting a little sample back, but it's not competing with anything you're doing.
And I think that's really interesting for how they portrayed the aliens in this movie, because, there's not people aren't just walking around going, oh, I'm going to click and echolocate, right? And, people aren't thinking about, oh, how do dolphins echolocate, or how do bats echolocate, right? We don't walk around thinking about that. And so the filmmakers coming up with this ability is actually really cool and is grounded in some patient studies that we have.
I would be very curious to ask them if that's what they intended, because that never occurred to me until you mentioned it, that's what those sounds were. To me, it sounded like a very effective, if perhaps a little overused, alien sound, like a cicada or like a...
Yeah.
I actually don't even know what insect makes that sound, but it's some insect that you hear on a hot day. I don't even know what is a locust.
They look like grasshoppers that fly.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think of it as like a grasshopper, like...
Sure. I get what you're saying. It's reminiscent of other kinds of aliens that have been in the sci-fi. Yeah. I mean, I think I'm making an assumption, I suppose, now that you bring it up, but the assumption
makes sense.
Is rooted in the fact that they are blind and they have no organs that appear to be eyes.
Yeah.
And so to navigate an environment would require some form of echolocation. Now, of course, this is applying an Earth-style echolocation, right, clicking, to an alien that doesn't necessarily follow Earth biology, right? But I mean, it makes sense to me that they would constantly have to create a map of their space.
Absolutely.
In the same way that, I don't know if you saw Hail Mary Project, in the same way that they visualize Rocky's ability to see a space, right? How it emanates from his body constantly, forming different dips and troughs and peaks so he can locate. And then, of course, they play that up to great hilarity when Grace is whispering into his log and he's like, I can hear you. You can
There's
hear
no way you
this.
can hear this. There's no way you can hear this. Yeah.
I can hear.
Yeah.
Yes. Who is Grace talking to?
Well, with echolocation, I'm just thinking of dolphins and really how little we know about sound still and the shape of sound. There's this really eccentric independent scholar named, I've got his name here somewhere. It's Kasowitz. I can't forgetting his first name, but he had a website called speakdolphin.com. Really, really likes dolphins. We'll start with that. He's a marine biologist, and he's also a proponent of marine parks, which, have been maligned quite a bit in recent years. But he did author this study with some other researchers where, and this is really cool, I don't know enough about it to speak much to its rigor, but they put a dolphin in a tank and had various objects, and they had a directional microphone that was designed to collect sound as it returned from the dolphin's target. So the dolphin's in the water, it has this organ, I think called a melon, that sends these pings of hypersonic sound. Those bounce off of the object, and this microphone would collect the returning sound.
Okay.
And they took this sound and they put it through a process. I imagine it took a lot of time to find out what this process was, but where they could reliably reconstruct the shapes that were displayed for each sound, including one of a diver in a particular pose. And they have an image they've constructed from this sound.
Wow.
And you can see the diver. He's got kind of a bent elbow on
like a
one
walk
side.
like
He's
an
kind of,
Egyptian kind of.
almost,
Yeah.
or more just like a hey there, kind of pose. And again, I'd have to know, like, is this like those kind of fudged MRI images where they very selectively filter part of it and not the other?
Oh, in
like
the
I said,
reconstructing what you saw.
yeah. And so, but assuming they were forthcoming about how they did it, it's impressive and astonishing that something we can identify as a shape is actually contained in a sound wave.
Yeah.
We think of sound waves as these two-dimensional, sine waves or things on a plot. Really, a sound wave is four-dimensional if we include time. And
Yeah.
we're only beginning to understand like how much complexity can be carried in that information.
Yeah,
and
that's fair.
so like I imagine, and these aliens, they're tearing through a cluttered forest, right?
Yeah.
And there's
There's
sneaking
so
through
much
this
sound.
little basement. And
Yeah, exactly. And they move with such quickness. Now, there are a few scenes where they show the location of the alien as the sound is being made, but in other cases, they just appear out of nowhere. And so you have to think to yourself, okay, well, the density is just extreme.
Yeah.
And so we don't get a sense, at least in from my perspective, we don't get a sense of like their true capability of if we're gonna take the assumption that these clicks work as echolocation, we don't get a true sense of how far they can quote unquote see, how far they can hear to get an accurate location for whatever they're trying to hunt. Which to me is, I think, as a scientist, to me is like, oh, you just have to show me this. It just has to be very brief. It doesn't even have to require any kind of dialogue, exposition, or anything. You just have to show me like some reasonable amount of difference, or excuse me, a reasonable amount of distance that I can infer as an audience member, like, oh wow, that's way better than human hearing.
Yeah. Can I ask, is this a bid for you to launch a second career as a science consultant for upcoming films? And
I would love to. Oh my God.
That would be a fun job.
That would be awesome. I think back to, I'm teaching psych and film this semester, and we're gonna do Inside Out. And I think back to how Pete Docter was just like, let me go just talk to these two Bay Area emotion researchers, Dr. Keltner and Paul Ekman, and get their thoughts on how I should characterize these emotions. Yeah, I would love to.
He forgot to consult the memory researcher, right?
It's good enough. It's good enough. It is good enough.
Yeah, it is.
It's okay. It's okay. You're safe. They can't hear us.
It worked.
You just need to rest now.
Where are they? Where are they?
I'll find them.
No, she was with me. She was with me, and then I had to go and do laundry, and he was with you. How did he?
Rockets.
So he'd still be there.
I'm sure he is.
He knows to wait for you. She's smart. She'll have found a place.
They know what to do.
It's a boy.
It's a boy.
I could have carried him. He was so heavy, wasn't he? I can still feel the weight in my arms. Small, but so heavy. And my hands were free. I was carrying the bag, but my hands were free.
You have to stop.
So I could have carried him. I should have carried him. Who are we? If we can't protect them, who are we? You have to protect them. Promise me. You will protect them.
Okay, so for this last segment, I want to talk about the climax of the film, which is Regan learns that her cochlear implant, when malfunctioning, emits a very high frequency sound that harms the aliens. I said in the intro, listen, somebody in the military figured that out way before she accidentally did. And I would imagine they would have taken care of this invasion pretty quickly. Yes, they are pretty sturdy and their skin is fairly impenetrable, but you get some 50 cals on them. Yeah, no, that's armor. Those are armor piercing rounds right there. Yeah, these aliens are done for. I mean, one thing before we move into the actual climax, the reason for the climax, I do want to say that this is not how cochlear implants work. They don't have this kind of weird feedback thing. Though I did want to say, because I wrote this down, that my grandmother had hearing aids, and every so often they would, like when she was like touching them, of course, and like adjusting them, would emit a high frequency sound because I think they were adjusting to the input and like messing around with the things. And
she probably couldn't hear because
she probably couldn't hear it at all.
Those high frequencies as we age.
Exactly, right? And then the other thing is that I've got AirPods Pros, and if you put your finger over the holes on the side of them to adjust them in your ear, because they like to fall out of my ears, so I'm constantly like pushing them back into my ear holes. If you put your finger over the holes that are receiving microphones for the noise cancellation, they will make a tweet sound because you are covering the input, and so it's like, I don't know what I'm supposed to be getting rid of. I don't know what I'm supposed to be destroying with the exact opposite sound frequencies. And so I just thought it was interesting that they came up with a good way to defeat the aliens, or at least like save themselves, but it's not actually how cochlear implants work.
Yeah, I think to make this part work, we have to look at a couple other, they're subtle, but things that happen in the film. And even then it requires some suspension of disbelief.
Yeah.
It seems to me that the aliens' bodies interact with electronics. Even though they can't necessarily perceive light waves, their bodies emit some kind of radio frequency or something.
Yeah.
Because there's a couple times that's really subtle, but where their lights, the family's lights will flicker and then they'll all freeze in panic because they know this means the aliens are close.
Yeah,
and that's also why they have these string lights all over their farm, is so they can kind of see the aliens coming, maybe. And so if the aliens are interacting with these electromagnetic fields, then maybe, since electricity is the currency that cochlear implants deal in, right?
Yeah,
it takes in sound, but it actually electrically stimulates the cochlea.
Right.
Maybe that's the key, and it creates some kind of feedback loop for these aliens, and builds up resonance and makes their heads explode, or at least makes all their plates move out of the way so they're vulnerable to a shotgun.
Yeah, because that's what happens. They can then get shot in the fleshy bits, right?
Right.
But I think this works with what we do know about sound. You mentioned at the start of our conversation that sound is kinetic energy, right? It's literal waves in a medium. And for the most part, the sounds that we encounter in our day-to-day lives are not harmful to us. But if they are loud enough, and we measure that on an absolute scale called decibels, if they're loud enough, they can be harmful. And this is what is called like the pain sensitivity threshold of hearing.
Right. And inconveniently, we tend to feel pain in our ears after noise-induced hearing loss starts occurring. So the first noise-induced hearing loss is not painful, unfortunately.
Yeah, so it's a silent detriment. Get it?
Nice.
It creeps up on you, right? Which is why, like, Apple Watches and other kinds of smartwatches will tell you like this environment is over 90 decibels and hearing loss can occur if you are sustaining this for the next 30 minutes or so.
Yeah, it's one of those things where you're like, where were you on that evolution? What have you done for me lately?
It's probably because we didn't, animals weren't experiencing this level of sound for extended periods of times, right?
Right. There weren't enough volcanic eruptions to.
Right. And one kaboom from a volcanic eruption is like, I'm out of here. I'm out of here, right? Or a thunderstorm, right? It's not a constant lightning and thunder, right? Because it's moving through
and again,
the air.
it's about good enough, right?
Yeah, and again, it's about good enough. Like this isn't going to be loud enough for me for a long period of time that I have to worry about it. And so, yeah, evolution's like, nah, I'm good. But then we figured out those thresholds, right? We're not we shouldn't be standing by jet engines.
Yeah.
Without ear protection, basically at all, or firing guns in an enclosed space without ear protection. But the fact that these aliens do have this weakness is grounded in what we already know about sound, right? They picked just the same way an alien that is like a super seer would probably have a weakness related to some form of electromagnetic radiation.
Yeah, or they're not like, if you have really good night vision, you don't do well in bright light, kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly.
And it does work as an additional piece of irony that serves the plot, I think. And it bookends the film really nicely in the way that the first bits of information we get are by these, since there's so little dialogue, we get it through these words that appear. One is a New York Post headline at the beginning where we're wondering what's going on, what's with these, why is the world ruined? And we see this headline that says, it's sound. And somehow they've managed to run a printed newspaper and get it distributed. But
they're just hanging out with the because those things are loud, right? So it's their waterfall in the middle of New York City.
Yeah, right. And so we get that. And then the next bit we get is Lee's lab space where he's working on cochlear implants, but he's also, he's trying to organize his thoughts on marker boards. Like, what is the weakness? And it's a little silly. You and I aren't writing like on our marker board, what's up with my data? Or, but that's there for us.
It's conspiracy minded. It's conspiracy minded writing, right?
Right. Yeah. So I
who's their leader?
I appreciate looking back on it now. You have the answer to the question, it's sound. And then just a few minutes later, you have in his lab, what is the weakness? And the answer is it's sound, or a certain sound.
Yeah. And we have, I make a mention in the intro about a fictitious device that was made to defeat Hulk in The Incredible Hulk in 2008. But you found a bunch of real life sound-based deterrents.
Oh yeah, we have all kinds of weaponized sound for sure that exists for real. I do want to mention one other sci-fi one. I think in the film Minority Report, which I think you have an episode on.
No, I haven't. No Minority Report.
Okay,
no,
maybe that's a future one for us, even though I'm not a memory guy exactly. But there's a sound cannon they use in one scene that's not at all needed for the plot, but it's just super awesome.
Yes, I do. It's one of Steven Spielberg's attempts to show futurism beyond like the fact that precogs exist.
Yeah.
It's just
but the way you reload it is like you kind of wind it around with like a whipping motion, and it's just, man, someone deserved a raise.
Kind of like
kind
of like how you have to pump a BB gun, right?
Yeah.
And load the chamber with air if it's not a CO2 kind of gun, or a paintball gun or something like that. And you can hear those, like when you fire them, you hear the massive escape of air. Yeah. But
so
what are some of these devices?
Yeah, so maybe the most relevant one is called LRAD, which is a long-range acoustic device. And, I don't love seeing it deployed against peaceful protesters like it has been recently. I do appreciate that it's less lethal, I'm doing air quotes here, than, it can damage your hearing, which is...
With one experience.
Yeah, absolutely. But that said, the way it works is super cool. Like the science behind it is super cool. You mentioned your AirPods, which use it's actually a surprisingly old technology, but destructive interference, where there's ambient sound around you, and so your earpieces produce a wave that is the opposite, like an anti-wave. It's the same shape but anti-phase to the wave of the ambient sound.
So a peak over a trough.
Exactly. Yeah. And so you can do this wave math where you add them together and they cancel out to zero.
Yeah, and the result is not hearing anything.
Right. And so the LRAD does both constructive and destructive interference.
Interesting.
It produces a loud noise, instead of using one big speaker to produce a loud noise, it uses an array of piezoelectric components.
Mm-hmm.
And these are like little speakers. They're little simple speakers. And because there's a whole bunch of little ones, and because of how they're spaced, they create constructive interference. That is, they all add together and amplify each other in one direction, and they create destructive interference in other directions. So you can point it at a target, and you can transmit information over a very long distance that is only received by, a particular direction and isn't really intelligible outside of this cone that it creates.
Right.
Or if it's a potentially harmful or irritating sound, you can direct it at a particular group of people and leaving people outside of that area less affected by it. And so you could compare it to a laser, sort of. It's like a sonic laser.
Sonic laser. Yeah, that sounds terrifying, honestly.
Yeah.
Sounds terrifying. It sounds, and pardon the pun here, it sounds like you could detect it if it was being used on you, which makes it, I think, less terrifying than those like potential microwave things that have been identified. So, boy, we're developing some technology that has some terrifying consequences. And I know you said less lethal, but of course we have to use air quotes here, because though it might not kill you, it could ruin your life.
Yeah, it could cause some really big problems for you. So other ones that are maybe less scary, there's something called the mosquito that shop owners, I think in the UK, you put it outside your shop and it emits a high-pitched sound, which teens can hear very well and is very annoying to them. And us older folks cannot hear because we've lost that range of hearing.
I do a demonstration with, sensational perceptions, most of the time, sophomores and juniors.
Yeah.
And so 19, 20-year-olds. And I will play 15, 16, and 20 kilohertz. So that's thousands of cycles per second. So these are very high frequencies. These are higher than normal human speech, although normal human speech does include sometimes in the 15 range. But I can't hear them. I will play them for my students. I can't hear them at all. And I will ask them if they can hear them. And I would say about 3/4 will say, I would say all of them say 15. About 3/4 say 16, that they can hear the 16. And I would say about maybe a half can hear 20.
Wow.
And then I ask them who listens to their music very loudly in their headphones. And that typically tends to correlate with who can hear 15, 16, and then 20.
Yeah, we do a similar thing where I just have a continuous increase, and I have people put their hand down when they can't hear anymore.
Oh, that's a good one too. Yeah.
Yeah. So other sound weapons, we're getting more theoretical here. There was this quote from Trump right around the Nicaragua invasion. And, who knows what to think of a random Trump quote. The reason I tend to think there's something to this one is it was just so out of nowhere and no reason to make it up. But he mentions a sound weapon that was used in that, potentially a classified one that's now less classified than it was before. But interesting. It's kind of frightening to think, what DARPA has come up with over the last couple decades. But
absolutely.
I'm curious. And, there was speculation that the government operatives who were working in Havana experienced symptoms of illness.
Yeah.
That became known as Havana syndrome.
Right.
It's still unclear what it was. It may have been nothing. It may have been a mass delusion.
Right.
It may have been a microwave weapon.
Which was I was referring to earlier. Yeah.
Yeah. Who wants to get microwaved slowly over a period of weeks?
Oh my God.
Or it could have been a sonic weapon of some sort. And we still don't know.
Yeah. And hypersonic, subsonic, it would be hard to determine. And then, of course, the most famous or at least in the urban legend realms, because I first learned about this from Mythbusters.
Okay. You're referring to the brown note.
Yes, the brown note.
We have to talk about the brown note for sure.
So, listener, if you are not familiar with the brown note, just consider brown to be the color of something that comes out of your behind. And so this is sound to induce defecating.
Right. If we assume that every solid object has a natural resonant frequency, and, you think of the intestinal tract as an object that has a natural resonant frequency, if you are able to match that frequency perfectly with the sound and make the amplitude of the sound long enough, you could cause someone to lose control of the organs around that
bowels.
structure.
Yeah.
And so
The Mythbusters tried their darndest. Could not get Adam to poop his pants.
Yeah, I wonder though, did we approach some less lethal levels of sound in doing that? Is Adam's hearing okay?
Yeah, so he wore earmuffs, like industry grade earmuffs.
That should take care of it. Earmuffs. I mean, we know sound can be conducted through our bones, right?
Sure,
I have these cool bone conduction headphones, which are allowed to not fall off of my head,
nice.
And which I can use in the water because it transmits sound to my cochlea through my jawbone, which is a little strange. That makes the sound a little different, but is really good because you also can have your ears open. And so if you want to ride a bike on the road, you can still hear the ambient sounds really well.
True. Yeah, I've been considering bone conduction, but of course those AirPods were quite hefty in price, so I do need to get my value. But and I haven't tried them before. I've never worn a pair, so I don't know the sound experience. But yeah, the whole ear, nose, and throat being connected is pretty cool. Pretty cool. And the eustachian tubes that are there to normalize pressure, because like I said, you go from air to liquid / a hard membrane.
And this is anecdotal evidence in support of the brown note. Don't worry, I don't get it's a different body part. I played saxophone in band in high school and college, and I mostly played tenor. Sometimes I played baritone, but there's one low note on the baritone that apparently was the same natural resonant frequency as my cranium, because every time I'd play it, my entire head would vibrate kind of violently.
And boy,
my vision's blurry. And it wasn't enough to like make it painful or unpleasant, but it was weird. It was weird to know that, oh, there's that note. The world's going to go a bit blurry for a moment. So
was this note a part of a piece that you had to learn and play?
I mean, it was a note that comes up a lot.
Okay. Oh, that's rough.
Yeah. But knowing it's there, I could kind of brace for it, but it's still weird. Weird feeling.
I want to thank Dr. T.R. Brooks for joining me to discuss A Quiet Place. Before we say goodbye, TR, is there anything that is out for you? Maybe a foray into another dalliance that you mentioned earlier?
Indeed, yeah. Thank you. As I mentioned, I've been writing some sci-fi. This grew out of teaching the sci-fi class, where I was like, oh, I guess I have to teach writing, creative writing now, which is weird for me. And so I guess since I'm teaching creative writing, I should learn to do it. And I will say it's a bit addictive. And I've now written an array of sci-fi stories. And I really started writing in earnest last year. And it's fun. It's frustrating. It's like anything worthwhile.
Yeah.
And finally got a story accepted last December.
Oh, congratulations.
Thank you. It came out, I want to say in February at amazingstories.com. And you can read it for free there. You can also find it on my... it's called Diascasis.
Yes, give us a little blurb.
Yeah. So diascasis, as you know, or you may know, or as you're about to learn, is a term from neuropsychology. It refers to a process our nervous system goes into after an injury. And the neurons become more sensitive. They become more sensitive to input. And that means as your brain heals, you can experience some things. And that's what this story is about. It's a near future sci-fi novelette about a brain injury and an experimental treatment designed to kind of maximize this diascasis process.
Cool.
And about some side effects that occur.
Interesting.
And,
I'll have to give it a little read then.
Yeah, it's at amazingstories.com, or you can find it through my website.
I will link that in the show notes.
Oh, thank you. And my website is trbrooks.com, where you can find my one published story and any others. I have a lot that are out submitted right now that I'm waiting to hear back. I have an impressive pile of rejection emails, but hopefully going to get some more acceptances soon.
Yeah, absolutely. You got to get those rejections in before you get those acceptances, right?
Yeah.
we know that as trying to publish elsewhere for our jobs and our other things.
We do. It's interesting, the differences in the process, though. I think you hear back a little sooner in creative writing.
Yeah.
And you don't really get very often. You don't get a revise and resubmit. You get a not for us, and we're not saying why.
Oh, bummer.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate you joining me again, TR. And yeah, this was a fun one.
My pleasure, Alex. Thanks again.
And that's going to do it for this episode. Until the next one, thanks for listening.